So did you know that in Torchlight Infinite, when you start to do too much damage, the damage numbers start to do something kind of weird? Well, it starts off pretty normal where if you're doing about thousands of damage, it's truncated with a K for thousands, M for millions, and then B for billions. But once you go past that, you get a letter that I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting a T for trillions, but that's not the case. And as we were playing our Shadow Swamp Thea here, kind of bumped into this number and I kind of thought it was a little bit weird. So there's the billions, and then yeah, that's Qs of damage, trillions of damage per tick. And yeah, this build is absolutely just doing an insane amount of damage, and it's been a lot of fun. This is Shadow Swamp Thea 1, and let's kind of do a quick little build guide for you. Now, this is the character that I swapped to second in this season. I switched from Erica 2, where you spend about like 4 to maybe 5,000 FE to kind of be doing 8-2s pretty like smoothly, but with a little bit of problems. And with about 2,000 FE, I was able to basically replicate my success with that character with this one. And I do know that you can start off with this as like a very first character. You don't necessarily need all of the gear to kind of like work your way up. It's not one of these builds that doesn't work until you have everything assembled, because there's people on the leaderboard that are playing this particular build, and this is the only character that they have for the entire season. And there's definitely a few legendaries though that I would recommend that you get pretty early on, but most of these are incredibly cheap. But before we do that, I kind of want to talk about what's going on with the build. So Thea 1 is pretty much known for being like a snapshot type of character. Ideally, you want to like kind of attack once and drag that attack through the map in some way, shape, or form, or like attack very rarely, basically, because you consume these blessings that are floating around. You can see these blessings up here. These are kind of like the equivalent of like power, frenzy, and endurance charges from Path of Exile. And these are like temporary buffs that give you something that you can consume for other effects. And as you can see, we have quite a few of these stacked up. And so we get a buff that buffs the next skill that we use based on our using other skills, like our non-main skill, and from consuming these buffs. And so with these two buffs together, we want to cast Shadow Swamp on an opponent. And then what this does is it creates this little purple ground. And this purple ground does a little bit of damage, and then it starts to do more damage, and does more damage and more damage the longer it lasts. And you can sustain the purple ground just by hitting with the Shadow Shot skill. And so this will move it to other places. So if I have one place down here, I can move it to enemies that I hit here. However, you can only have one Shadow Swamp active at a time, and you're just kind of moving around the pool of death around the map. And this playstyle turns out to be pretty darn fun. And so there's a lot of ways you could potentially automate this by like taking Shadow Shot and putting like any of the automation tools where it automatically shoots at nearby enemies for you. But that's not something I've done just yet, mostly because my energy is a little bit low, and I want to like really try to crank as much damage out of this as possible without doing any automation stuff. And it doesn't really bother me per se, but that's something you can definitely do. Now, getting back into the gear, there's this gear that gets started is actually pretty darn reasonable. So things like Corrupted Marrow you can get started with. This is just 1 FE, and you do want this corruption eventually for max terror quantity, which is like not really all that bad. And this hat just like gives us that max terror quantity. Now for Shadow Swamp, that will not allow you to have more swamps active, but does give you a significant damage boost, which is why we use this. However, this hat has a big drawback in the fact that it gives us negative terror charge recovery speed. If we only had this hat, we would never get terror charges back. Since terror charges give us a lot of damage, we need some way to counter that, and that's where Kingly Armor comes along. So this once again gives us another max terror quantity, gives us main skill level, gives us erosion res, but importantly, it gives us terror charges restoration speed is set to a percentage of the default value. And what this means is that this is going to be the speed no matter what. No, regardless of the fact you have negative 99% recovery speed here, it's going to be set to 281% of the default value. And this is not like a super expensive chest either. You can get this pretty easily. And as you can see, I don't even have like anything fancy corroded on it. And the rolls aren't even all that particularly insane. And so I think that this is a pretty nice chest to get. And then the third piece of gear I'd recommend is Strange Snow. is this gives us affliction effect. And affliction effect is going to be something you're going to be looking for on like all of your gear. And the reason why this is so important is because affliction stacks up on enemies and makes them take additional dot damage for every stack that's on them, up to 100. And so if this was the only affliction effect I had here, it would be taking affliction from making them do 100% additional damage taken to 174% additional damage taken, which is pretty massive. And this likewise is a pretty cheap amulet to get started with. Better rolls might cost you a little bit more, but this is not bad at all. Lastly, I kind of would recommend rounding that off with Crossroad gloves, which are super cheap for single target. This inflicts pain on nearby enemies for a short period of time, or Praise for Injury if you want to clear. Praise for Injury is really great because enemies that are affected by trauma will explode and deal physical damage to nearby enemies. And this just leads to some really great pops. They kind of made rare monsters more difficult this season, and this really allows you to just kind of eliminate them by eliminating all of the little mobs that are around them. For the rest of the gear, things that are important are things like max tenacity blessings or max agility blessing here on ring and affliction effect. And the reason why getting more blessings for tenacity is important is because our hero trait allows us to every time we get one max tenacity or agility blessing, we also get one max focus, which is like kind of the thing we need to stack the most to get the most damage out of it. So this is really important. Then on weapons, we're looking for, in this order, max terror charges, affliction effect, and then skill levels. So you can get like erosion skill level or spell skill level on this. Reap is really important. You can like damage to life as your last prefix there. But as you can see here, I don't really have super duper crazy weapons in any sense of the imagination. And I think the only thing that I have is pretty nice right now is this amulet where we have 3 tier 0s that I got very lucky on. I slam with some aura effect here, but it's something you don't even really need. Going into hero traits and stuff, we're just going up, up, down, but it's pretty important here that you want to pick up the Bitter Fruit of Omniscience. This actually has a prototype version of this, which means that you're going to unlock both of these particular nodes. And yeah, that just gives you a lot of power. For your hero relic, you're going to look for damage in the next main skill, and then this punishment cooldown thing, which helps a lot. And then my hero memories are kind of bad because I have max energy shield as opposed to damage. For passive stuff, in terms of slates, I have one here that gives affliction. I think it's pretty important because it increases that affliction effect. Life conversions allowing me to do a little bit more shenanigans with sealed than I normally would. And on the rest of the slates, you want to look for stuff that gives you either max focus blessing or own focus blessing. So like this one here lets you have one more tenacity, agility, and focus. However, this only adds one focus blessing because this is not adding max. Likewise, this mod here does not add a maximum tenacity, so it doesn't count either. I'm going to show the rest of the passive trees real quick, just so they're on there. You can check out the builder in the description down below for max roll. You'll be able to see everything as well. I just want to make sure that these are in the video, just in case. And last but not least, for candles and skills and stuff, getting terror quantity or terror charges are both really good to get. I have both of these. I think quantity definitely gives you more damage, but I kind of prefer to run around with a Soul Eater candle here. The damage, skill area, and movement speed for any enemy defeated recently just kind of makes the build feel faster. For Shadow Swamp itself, we're just loading this up with a whole ton of damage, and then we almost never use this skill except for the very start of the map or if it falls off. And we're going to be using Shadow Shot to move it around, and so it's kind of important here that we are using greater projectiles to make it more easy to hit. Added physical gives us physical damage, which is important, and it gives us trauma damage. Added fire gives us base ignite damage and fire, which allows us to apply ignite. We are going to be applying all the afflictions to get more damage from that. And then we're getting the rest of the damage types from a mod like this that turns our physical damage part of it into fire, cold, and lightning. So that covers the cold and lightning as well. There are other ways to get all of the different afflictions, but this is kind of what I'm going with right now. For the rest of the skills, Stone Skin is incredibly strong as a defensive skill. I'm using a preparation medium here just to spam it basically. Whenever it comes off cooldown, this spams it every 4 seconds. This right now has a 6-second cooldown, which provides a 70% damage shield, and that will save you up to 2600. But this is scaling with our supports and other things, so this is probably closer to like almost a 5000 damage shield, which makes this incredibly tanky, especially with all of our tenacity. Defense layers means that we're getting, I should actually swap this out to something else. Maybe this will be different in the builder. And then uplifting is giving us more defensive effect. The reason I say that is because we already have a thing that makes it so that if our energy shield starts, the it goes faster, if you would. Blurry steps is for movement speed. It's increasing the duration, increasing the effect of it. Star Stalker is an incredible single target booster for you. This provides just baseline a 67% additional dot damage. But what this does is it shoots out a little projectile like this little yellow star, and it will cling on to an elite, and it will stay on that elite basically forever until it dies. But you do have to be close to it in order to get the damage. And there'll be like kind of a little golden circle that is around the enemy. And this kind of has a long cooldown. Like it has a baseline cooldown of 10 seconds. And so you kind of like only really want to use this when you're really popping off. And so you can kind of see this little yellow tether that's coming off of us, and this very faint yellow circle around the dummy here. And that's our Star Stalker. If we get too far away, the buff will fall off of us, but if we get close again, it will reconnect, I believe. And so, yeah, that's that. And then we talked about that. Our auras here, erosion enhancement. I put this on seal conversion. If you don't have enough life to seal this, you can drop some of the supports. Energy Fortress for more energy shield. Deep Pain for more damage as well. And then elemental resistance aura. This is very useful if you can get the precise version of this. It's kind of like a really weird setup right now because the normal version of elemental resistance provides max resistance but does not provide baseline resistance, whereas the precise provides max and baseline. And so if you're using the regular one, you're probably not going to be able to go very high on your resistances, whereas if you can afford this one, and this is getting more expensive by the day, it's like almost like 2000 FE alone, that's going to provide a lot of survivability. As you can see here, my max resistances are now up to 84%, which is makes us very tanky. Now, let's go run a quick map here to kind of show you what the gameplay is like. It's pretty simple, it's pretty easy, and pretty satisfying with all the explosions. I'm just going to put up a time mark 8.2 here, not deep space. Oh, I didn't realize I had this. This is kind of nice. And let's take off all of that. I'm just going to do a normal map here. Now, I do like using praise for injury while mapping, so we'll swap to that. I also swapped to my Soul Eater candle. And we're just going to hop right in. So first thing I do is I cast Shadow Shot, and I look at the buff up here. And this one's 10, which is kind of low. We can get up to 20. Now it's at 20 now, so I'll cast our Swamp again. And now from this point on, I don't really intend to recast Shadow Swamp. And we're just going to absolutely just plow through the content at this point. And we need to make sure that we're continuing to hit with our Shadow Swamp so that we can basically pull the, we hit with our Shadow Shot, so we're pulling the Shadow Swamp forward with us. And it's important to remember that we only have one Shadow Shot at any one time. So you're not like afflicting them with some sort of dot when you hit them with the shot. It's basically just a pointer for your swamp to move around to a different target. And if you move the swamp away from an enemy onto another one, it will stop taking damage basically immediately and take no damage. And so you just kind of need to manage that a little bit. That said, if you're using any of the automation tools that allow you to shoot skills automatically just from like walking near enemies, or I think it's like target and lock, those would like allow you to make it so you can mark enemies to be automatically shot. And yeah, that's pretty much a map there. Just kind of zipping right through. Everything's just dying instantaneously. We've obviously gotten a lot more gear since we first started off in A2. And yeah, it's been pretty smooth, pretty fun build. And it's definitely something we're looking to improve. So the builder is like my current gear. It's definitely not like the end game perfect gear. I would check out people on the leaderboards to see kind of what they're doing. But hopefully this video helped you out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, please feel free to come by the stream. We'll see you next time.